React component represent a user interface. Going back to the example from the earlier video, you can say that our application has the five components: one for header, one for side, navigation, one for the main content, and one for the footer. And finally, one component to contain every other component. The containing component is the root component and is usually named as app component in your application. Each of the four nested components describe only a part of user interface. However, all the components come together to make up the entire application. Component are also usable. The same components can be used with different property to display different information. For example, the side map component that can be the left side navbar as well as the right side navbar. And as already mentioned, component can also contain the other component. For example, app component contains the other component. Now, how does the component translate the code in our application? The component code is usually placed in JavaScript file. For example, app component is placed in app.js. You can also have the component file with the .js extension. But for this video, we will simply stick to the simple.js extension. So let's move to our code site.
Now that we know the basic working of React application, or at least at very rudimentary one, let's actually go ahead and build a component. So I am going to delete app.js and after CSS, or right now, if I save it, it failed to compile because it cannot find the app.js. It's attempting to import here. There is no file, there is no export, no. So it's not gonna happen. So in the source directory, create a new file and call it with myval. Okay, let's call it application.js. Now in here the first thing we need to do is to import React and React's component so that we can create our own component and call it. So let's do that. So import React component and the curly braces there are important from React. Now drop down a few lines and we are actually going to start building of our new component. So we are going to write the class application and extend the components. We are gonna open that up now by itself. This does not import it. So every time we create a class that we want to use in any other file, if it is gonna be imported in another file, we are gonna need and export it. So the syntax for that is to export the file and then the class name. And here we need to specify it in the current directory. So dot slash application hit semicolon and by itself. This was still failed because it's attempting to mount up. We don't have a class called app. It says app is not defined, so we are going to have a render our own component. So a component in React, so it is going to be written the same as HTML is. So you are gonna open it, will find bracket and then application, and then you are itself closing. So you are gonna close. It can be a self closing. For the most part, it will be a cover into how to wrap. We will cover how to wrap component later on this course. Now if we go back to our browser, we don't have a render. So this is necessary method within our class. So what we need to do is on application, the one application method for a React component is called render. And what this method does, it return HTML or text or variable, whatever the case may be. So we are going to return just for right now for a string which we're going to say hello world, and then we are gonna end up with the semicolon. Now if we go back to our application, we see that exactly what we get, just a straight. And if we right click to go to the inspect, we are gonna to see that it has mounted into the dev.id route, and we also get into the React dev tool shortly. But for right now, we can see that it's mounted. So few things about the render method itself is like any other method, you can declare variable and whatnot and use them. So we can return in bracket HTML content. So I could change that to each one hello world and then save control. So then open up my browser. We should get the H1. Now you will notice that I'm not refreshing this. This is actually automatically updating when I write new code and save it now. So we can't in return method and have a top level element and then any other top level element we are gonna see. Here there is error. JS expression, this is the JS JavaScript and the current implementation must have one parent element. This means we can only have a one top level element. So I am going to wrap both of these in a div and call it today. So there we go, problem solved. So now if I save, you're gonna see it gonna compile and the browser automatically refreshes and we get this basically how to write a render method in our own component. Now we can also print out variable in here and use content like how to do we that it within the render method. Now the return statement within the render method itself, we can declare variable. So I am going to write let for those who took my, I think it was called like the complete front end development course. So you will learn JavaScript there. We use the keyword to create variable and that is the scoping issue. So const it is usually basically it is a constant and it cannot be changed after it has been set. So we are going to say let name equal and then we are going to save it. And now how we actually use this with return statement is similar to the other technology that use curly braces. If you have used any model or we controller kind of framework, then you should be a second nature to you by now. But in this instance, one curly braces that rapid and then we print out the variable name and we can load up our browser and we will see that it's printed out correctly. So I think that's it. As far as this gone, we have just written a component, we have mounted it into it and it is a DOM element by ID route, and in the next video I am going to talk about the special React method for the component class. I hope you enjoyed this video till right now. So do comment, like and share this video for more future update. I will see you in my next class.